Welcome to the Veri Podcast, and today we are very pleased to have Ranga Makwata, who's the CEO of Fincent Capital in Zimbabwe, joining us. Hello, Ragnar. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks, Derry. It's good to be on your podcast, and I'm so looking forward to it.
When you've had a day that's been a very stressful day, that lots of work, things going on around you, how do you switch off? What do you do to switch off and get your own time and get your head straight?
So usually, we tend to meet up as friends. Maybe just okay. It depends on the day of the week. So if it's towards the weekend, especially on Fridays, I meet up with my friends in our bar. So this is where we are doing this interview from. So we just meet and chat, just to share about how the rest of the week has been. But if it's maybe during the week, I usually want to, reading just relaxes me. So I always tell people that when I'm sad, I read. When I'm too happy, I read. It's just a way of just relaxing myself, but also maybe sometimes just be home with family, just talking to kids, so you just get me going and maybe add some activities in the church whenever it's yeah. So there are a lot of things that I do just to cool down. Sometimes I do watch some TV, but uh, it looks like most of my time is now being consumed maybe the way I get content like online on social media on X and sometimes on YouTube. Yeah, so that's sort of my go-to kind of activities if I just want to cool down after a long day.
Okay, well, say you brought it up, so let's follow on with that. Again, Ragnar introduced me to his podcast that he does out of Zimbabwe, and probably an opportunity for you to actually plug that at least now. But I've watched a few of your episodes, so I do enjoy that, and I suggest everybody switches on and has a look. As you see in the background, Ragnar is surrounded by, well, you don't see it all. Actually, there's a large amount of whiskey bottles. So it's a little bit of a finance, let's say, podcast with a bit of a difference because everybody's having a social at the same time, and I don't see any problem with that whatsoever. So everybody's chewing the fat over a whiskey or two. So yeah, why don't you let the people know about your podcast and how it came about? Would be interesting for me to find out, really.
Yeah, it's called Friday Drinks. So there are a couple of things that I do. So I'm in finance, running a stockbroking firm and advisory, but I also have a media business called ZFN. So this media business basically, we are sending electronic newsletters to paying subscribers. So we thought maybe in addition to having that newsletters, we needed to also venture into the audiovisual. So we started this podcast called Friday Drinks. So basically, it's colleagues that are just having drinks on a Friday, after a long day in the financial service sector, before you go home, maybe you just need to wind down a little bit. So, yeah, the background here, you should be able to see some whisks, but also it's not just alcoholic beverages. I'm sure there are some marks there. The most ironic thing is I'm the producer of the show, but obviously I'm a non-drinker, but my colleagues do drink. And because I've been in the financial service for the longest time, I'm quite comfortable hanging around with colleagues drinking. So the setting in the bar is in the bar because we're just trying to sort of make it informal and make it less serious. And I will always hide behind the phrase that we don't know what you're talking about. So if you ever say something that you think, what were you guys talking about? Like we don't know, we're just having a drink as colleagues. But the show has actually grown. It has become sort of a go-to for if you want. to get some in-depth analysis into the Zimbabwean economy, major macroeconomic developments, and the policy direction. I think it's a platform that many have found very useful, including our policymakers. So I think what makes it very exciting and what has sustained us for the past 4 years is we're just a bunch of friends. So the core group is myself, my friends Faro and Tinashe. All of us have got our own experiences in the investment banking area. So, you could, for example, Tinashe is an economist with international experience, having working in investment banking uh, uh, institutions globally, and then my Farah and myself have been asset management, stockbroking, and those kind of things. So we are the anchors, we are the core of that team. But every now and then we invite um, guests to come. But our viewers actually like it when it's just the three of us. But we try to spice it up by bringing in externals to just talk about these issues. So yeah, in a way, obviously, we're just trying to encourage a culture of sharing ideas publicly, responding to public policy, and giving feedback to policymakers. And yeah, it's been an enjoyable ride, and it's basically mirrors what we do on a typical Friday, which is to meet, talk, and have a drink. And yeah, that's why I call it Friday Drinks. It's on YouTube.
Okay, well, we'll provide the links to that, and we'll share it as part of this. Obviously, the publication when it actually goes out, and we'll do
Mm.
that obviously when we're placing it on LinkedIn as well. So, yep, we'll get it out there as much as we can, which would be great. Okay, so staying on the private side, you mentioned earlier about the church, family. Can we just go into that a little bit? Do you wife, children? You're obviously a churchgoer. I would take it that's very important to you, and like it is for a lot of people throughout Africa.
Yeah, I'm a Christian, so I've got a family, I've got kids. Um, my eldest is writing their ordinary level. I don't know what they call it. It's a Cambridge certificate or general certificate in education or something, but something equivalent to just ordinary level. And then with my second being a son is in form two, and then other two little ones. So yeah, it's obviously it's that's my family, and those are the closest people that I have where I draw most of my inspiration from. And so if I'm not at the workplace, I am usually with them, or maybe if I'm not with my friends on a typical um, after work working hours, so sort of I'll be with the family. So yeah, that's basically us. But I'm fairly flexible in terms of my interactions. So I interact with people from all walks of life. Like I've just indicated in the intro that I hang out with friends who drink, and we actually this is our business, but we are actually have got our small bar so that whenever our friends are here, our clients are here, we can be entertaining them. This is more or less what happens in investment banking, right? That it's work and play, and obviously you want to, most deals are actually structured when you are in a less formal environment. You then take them to the boardroom after you've agreed on them outside the boardroom. So yeah, I'll say that's how I'm socialized.
I totally agree with you with a lot of things. I mean, the people will be used to seeing me on my other podcast where there's a background and there's boxing gloves and various things that But that is basically, I've got a man cave and there is boxing bags in there. I have a bar in there. I have a work area in there. It's the whole thing is just laid out, and my whole life is on there. The images, that photographs that I've been taken over the years, I've printed them out, and it's a collage across the whole of the wall from when my kids were first born, all the way through. Well, actually, earlier than that, obviously my grandparents and parents and my wife's parents, and all the way through. So there isn't a square inch on the wall that actually is available. It's literally just picture and poster, or some sort of memory. Even if it's a ticket stub from somewhere I've been, I've actually stuck that on the wall. So I do like that kind of environment. The one that you're kind of creating is for friends and for socializing as well. Um, okay, so with moving on, let's say slightly, but let's move into the work side of things. And how did you first get into the industry? And what did you experience when you did?
Well, yeah, mine is a very long story. Maybe we started maybe from my high school time. So I was a relatively um, smart kid. Wow. So I could have been anything that I wanted. So in the sort of demanding kind of careers, whether it was in medicine, in law, whether it's in engineering and etc. But I like the idea of business, the idea of money, the idea of the commercial side of things. Just into my high school, as it were. So that has been my passion, as it were. And then I went to varsity, specializing in finance, which is more on the investment side and less on the accounting side. And in my third year, I went for industrial attachment. So, that was the kind of educational structure for most of our universities here, that you do 2 years at the campus and then 1 year of industrial attachment. And then after that, you come and do your final year. So, I for my industrial attachment, I was attached at the time, it was mostly an asset management company, but a leading one at that time, and which was being run and owned by the current Minister of Finance, Professor Mtolengo, they called Barbican, and then it transformed into a bank and etc. So that's when I actually got introduced to the investments, and I think my very first assignments were actually in fund management. So maybe being introduced to the different clients, and um, I think, in fact, the very first intro was mostly into analysis, where I was working with the analyst at the organization, just taking me through your basics, how to do your price sheet, how to do a weekly report, how to do some analysis of a company. So that just got me interested. Then obviously I had to learn quite quickly, because it wasn't. Although I like these things, I really had not had any exposure. So it was just an eye opener. Then from there, I went back to varsity. I finished my fourth year. As soon as I was done, I joined a pension fund, one of the leading pension funds in Zimbabwe, called the Mining Industry Pension Fund. That's the investment analysis. And from there, it's been one row after another into asset management, into merchant banking, into stockbroking, into corporate finance, and all the way until at some point I then had to branch out, sort of fortuitously in a way, that I then ended up being getting into entrepreneurship, and then just starting to run my own business in investment banking, as it were.
Okay, very good. And talking on obviously the broking side. Do you remember the first trade you ever made on behalf of a client?
Oh, it's a very difficult one. I wish I would still remember it, But I know that the very first thing that I did was I was assigned to be on the derivatives desk where I was closing some call options positions for quite a number of clients. And yeah, I think my first foray were probably into some of the pen stocks. I know one of my friend always teases me that I got him to invest in one of the uh, small little companies that were listed at the time. I think it was Meditech, and the idea was, it's a pen stock, and you know what, this thing tends to jump whenever there's activity on the market, and etc. I wouldn't remember precisely the first one that I did, but it was around those kind of stocks, and obviously over time, I then started understanding how the rest of the listed stocks behaved, mostly for the Zimbabwean market.
It doesn't matter how small they are. It's still the first one. It's very exciting. I always remember my first trade when I qualified as a stockbroker. We were told to cut our teeth on blacklisted clients. So basically, these were clients that had said to the company I was working for, "Never call me again." And so they were clients, but they were old clients. So they were ones, "Never ring, never ring." And we were given this list, and we had to ring up three clients in a row, the three telephone numbers, not knowing who you were speaking to the other end, and
Okay.
pitch them a stock. And we had a selection of stocks we could pitch them to. Anyway, these clients, knowing that actually they don't want to speak to you, you were hoping that they wouldn't pick up the phone, and you could get away with it. But bearing in mind you were in a class environment as such,
Mm,
basically an office environment, and your call was on a loudspeaker, and it was
okay.
30 other people listening to what you were saying. So you were calling, and everybody else was listening in on you. Anyway, I always remember, and the first call nobody picked up, second call nobody picked up, third call somebody picked up, and I always remember I was buzzing because I sold this guy $10,000 worth of Coca-Cola shares on the my first. That was my first ever call.
Wow.
So that to me was quite amazing. And this was a client that said, "Never ever call me again." So
Mm,
I
mm,
say you never remember, you never forget your actual, say the buzz, at least the buzz of actually how it made you feel. It was great.
mm, 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 mm. Yeah, no, no, no. Obviously, that's true. So for me, I started in asset management. So the buy side, obviously, the pressure to look for clients was not that much because we had clients already, whether they were high net worth individuals or some pension funds that we were investing for. So already you've got a book that we have to start from. The way for you would then look for new clients was through build parades where you'll be invited by trustees of some of these pension funds where you'd go and present your story. So obviously you then get prepared before you get to be thrust into the deep end, as it were. But obviously, things are different if you start off from the south side, where on day one you have to be looking for clients and to be able to sell your first stock. So, uh, I, I think for me, starting off from the buy side. I don't know whether it was a disadvantage or an advantage, but right now I'm in a south side environment, where you just have to go out there hustling and making sure that you get all those clients on board. And there's a lot of research that you have to do to try and convince them to invest into this and that. The buy side, less, the pressure is there, but you are basically like in the Zimbabwean scenario. If you are into pension funds, you are basically talking mostly to pension fund administrators and trustees, and then you're making your pitch to them. You're writing some very elaborate proposal to these trustees on why they should consider you as the fund manager for their fund and etc. So it's a bit different. And then when you make that transition from buy side to sell side, for me that was the most challenging sort of transition, because it requires a different sort of mindset, at least with my experience, that uh, buy side, the pressure to sign a client on board, or at least it's still there. It's probably not as high as it is on the sell side, where if you don't get a client, then you're not gonna get the brokerage, and then you don't have the income, and it affects even your remuneration as well. So yeah, that's been the experience I've had over these years.
Who's been the let's say biggest influence in your career? I was just something, you've looked up to, has motivated you, who's actually, let's say, given you that drive. Is there anyone in particular you can let us know about?
Oh, look, I've had a few people along the way. So obviously, I would say when I was just starting, because I was at Barbican, I would say certainly Professor Mtuli Ncube, who was the owner of the firm that I was working in. I really admired how he was switched on. I mean, he's a very sharp individual. His understanding of how the capital markets work, and etc. His experience across the world, and what he was trying to do in the Zimbabwean market, introducing new products and etc. So that was quite inspirational for me there. And then I also pick my former boss. He's late now. His name was Tony Fisher. He was probably one of the best practical analysts that I've ever seen, because he was not the type that would go into your typical long form kind of analysis. Very simple things where he would just ask you for you to do just a table, just looking at the key aspects of whatever company that he wanted to, and would always. He is actually the first person to introduce me to technical analysis, because he always wanted to look at the charts at the end of the day. Okay, this is what the moving average is saying, moving average conversion, divergence, the relative strength index, and those things, the candlesticks, and etc. And he really had a nose for talent. So he would see that this youngster is talented and try to push you in the right direction. And as long as you do your work well and diligently, he will stand by you. By this, I mean, as an analyst, sometimes there's a pushback from corporate executives whenever you write a paper that's not favorable in their views. So they would want to come after you, and Tony would support you as long as you say you had a reasonable basis for your research. So and then a few other guys. I've got a friend of mine who was my supervisor. He taught me a lot of what I know right now. So this guy's called Admire. A lot of what I know right now. And then, so along the way, I'm always looking for people to, mentors from a bit. They don't necessarily have to be in direct contact with me, but I just always want to emulate some people and say, okay, now I like the way they are doing this particular thing, and I would also try to follow into their footsteps. I also talk of a fellow colleague who's also a stockbroker and runs his own business. A colleague called Itai Chirume. He has had a career that I've admired from afar, and I always find myself try to pick one or two things from there. So I always consider myself a student of life. Every day I'm looking to learn. So I always put someone ahead and say, you know what, this is how uh, I like how they're doing that. I want to be their apprentice, even if we don't get into a proper apprenticeship kind of relationship. But from afar, just learning how they're doing it, and say, okay, Ranga, this is what you can also do. So that has also helped me to start mentoring others along the way.
Yeah, and is mentoring important to you as far as giving back? As you mentioned it earlier, you want to follow in their footsteps. Is that something part and parcel of what you like to adapt as far as the day to day work is concerned, or do you look for do you look for specific, let's say, prodigies, or is it just something that's an ongoing thing on a say day to day?
So for me, it's such a big thing. So I like to um, be working with upcoming professionals. As long as someone has demonstrated that they are keen to learn, I'm always available. So right now there are quite a number of mentorship programs that I'm involved in. For example, in this market, we have got the high school capital market quiz show that's being run by the Securities and Exchange Commission. Um, from its inauguration, I've been one of the adjudicators, and also I also help in creating the questions which the students are using. And in fact, the if you I don't know when you travel to them, you came in contact with the investment handbook, the 101 investment handbook by Securities and Exchange Commission. I wrote that book. It's more like a go-to for people that want to know how the local capital markets work and how investment works. And the Securities and Exchange Commission has been pushing it to high school children and also university. And I'm involved also with the local chapter of the CFA community. I'm a CFA charter holder myself, and I am a part of a group called Investment Professionals Association of Zimbabwe. This is more like a local chapter of the CFA Society South Africa. So what we do there's a lot of mentorship programs that we do at national level. One of them is a competition that is called the CFA Research Challenge, which I've been coordinating from the time that we started hosting it in Zimbabwe. That's from 2016, 2017. So I can count so many hundreds of graduates that we have mentored in that program. Every year, my colleague and I are going into universities talking about the financial market, the investment profession, the CFA program. This year alone, we've been to like 6, 7 universities with the support of CFA Society South Africa. And at my workplace, I always take graduate internship for internship, graduate trainees, and attachment. Actually believe that we need to have a very strong base of pool of talent as a way to develop our local capital market. So yeah, I believe so much in mentorship, and I'm actually a very practical mentor, if I would put it that way.
It's great work that you're doing, most definitely. And what is evident that we saw whilst we were, we heard what we were experiencing actually, the amount of people that were going to universities outside of Zimbabwe that were going back to Zimbabwe, because again they that they which to me actually showed great sign of for Zimbabwe's future. I thought it was brilliant. Okay, so the well, one last question on the early days, and we'll move on to where your current status is now. But if you were to come across your younger self, just heading out into the finance world, what advice would you give to yourself?
Yeah, I would say talent is good, but also network is more important. You need to have a very strong network of contacts, connections. So if you don't have them naturally, maybe because of where you are coming from, you have to make an effort to ensure that you have got a bigger a bigger network that you can always lean on. I would also say, this market requires, you have to be more ethical. We always find ourselves in sort of fiduciary responsibilities where you are handling people's money. So you need to ensure that you respect the fact that your client comes first, well ahead of you, well ahead of your firm. I would also tell a younger me the importance and the importance of just being very very strong technically, being competent in the work that you do, and that you have to keep upgrading yourself in terms of learning new things, getting new exposures in different kind of markets. And and that if you do it very well, it is a very very rewarding profession. It's very rewarding, and it's very fulfilling, and you should only do it if you really enjoy doing it, because it can be quite stressful. It can be quite stressful. You just imagine the way markets move up and down. You are advising clients to get into this particular position, something goes wrong, and then if you can't handle it, you can uh, literally break down, because you feel like, someone has lost their money because of my advice. But as long as you've done that, you have followed proper due diligence, you've done your very best to try to reach, before you reach to that decision or the recommendation. I think you just have to say it's the market. you know you don't control the market. So the very best that you do is to ensure that you put in enough research to try and um, back your decisions. So yeah, lots of teachable moments along the way that I would want to tell my younger self.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, um, let's move on to your current position, the CEO of Fincent. And why don't you tell us about your working day? Let us know, let the viewers know about what you do. Tell us about your team, and yeah, anything you want to divulge to us, to the areas that you specialize in, what you're potentially moving into. Off you go.
Uh, Vincent is um, investment banking boutique. So we have got licenses in stockbroking, which allows us obviously to trade on the local capital markets, which is the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange, the Victoria Falls Exchange, and the Financial Securities Exchange, and also obviously to offer investment advice and to do research. So, and also I've got a separate investment advisory license. Basically, that's the one we use for corporate finance. So, so those two licenses allow us to offer trade execution services on the local securities exchanges that I've already highlighted. We also offer brokerage services, research. Um, uh, s- we have been building onto our research simply because I myself I'm more an analyst than anything. So yes, I've got a trading license, but I'm more an analyst, less of a trader. My partner Faro is the trader within the organization, and obviously working with other two members who are traders. And then we do a lot of corporate finance work, whether it's company valuation, helping in fundraising, just putting together work for our clients who want to either list on the local stock exchange, clients who want to just create products. In recent time, we've seen a growth in other listed products, for example, the exchange traded funds and the real estate investment trust. And we provide those services. We have got a fairly small team. So from the trading side, we have got two brokers, myself and Faro, and then we have got a team of operations people. I'm mostly helping with back office work and the accountant. And we've got two analysts. I also double up as one of the analysts. And then from the advisory side is mostly myself as a managing director of that, and then just working with our analysts. So our team is fairly flexible and sort of interchangeable in terms of the roles that they play. Mostly because the volume of business has generally been very low, especially for the listed space. So most of the advisory work that we are doing is for non-listed sort of businesses, doing evaluation, doing so whether it's valuing a business or providing advice on the capital structure, the balance sheet, and profiling some solutions on that area. So that's what we do. And I'll speak about ZFN. It looks different, but it's also complementary to the things that we do, because in Zimbabwe we don't have access to stock exchange news that you'd have in other markets. And big data providers, for example, Bloomberg, don't quite cover Zimbabwe in a more sort of in-depth and robust way. So ZFN tends to be that business where if you're looking for data on Zimbabwe, if you want some news on listed companies and the executives and people around them, you subscribe to ZFN, of which most of our local businesses are clients of ZFN. So I think that sort of covers all the work that we do in our firm, whether it's from the Fincent Capital side and from the ZFN side.
Ragnar, there seems to be just Ranka, sorry. There seems to be just a bit of disturbance on the mic. I don't know. Just it's kind of yeah. Just be aware of that.
Okay.
Okay, Ranga. The whilst we're on the topic of sorry, I'll tidy that up. Whilst we're on the topic of Zimbabwe, you mentioned about the markets and there not being liquidity. Again, perhaps for the viewers, could you explain that? And again, we can possibly cover at the same time, which I normally ask about, let's say the eccentricities or the complexities and the opportunities in working in specific regions. So perhaps we could cover that in this segment.
Yeah, the issue of the exchange rate has been a major issue for the Zim economy that has really affected a lot of things. Simple thing is, if someone wants to bring money into Zimbabwe, what exchange rate are they going to get? Because on the ground there is the official exchange rate, and then there's also the parallel market exchange rate. Usually, the gap between them tends to be quite wide. Of course, here and there you sometimes see regulators or monetary authorities coming in to, change things a little bit. So that has really affected the flow of capital into Zimbabwe. But the recent development has been the creation of a market that is predominantly US dollar based. This is the Victoria Falls exchange. So on this platform, trades only okay in United States dollars, and moving in and out funds onto that market is fairly easier and swifter. But once you have mastered and you have understood how the market functions, there are quite a number of opportunities, obviously, and simply because it's a less covered market, as it were, because you know, I guess most of potential investors, whenever they think of Zimbabwe, they are worried about those currency issues. So if you're worried about the currency issues, the Victoria Falls Exchange, it's a nice place for you. But recently, we have seen quite a growth in the fixed income space. So it's probably only the returns on the fixed income market are quite attractive, even in dollar terms. It's um, it's quite normal to, you know, for one to get returns as high as 20% per annum in US dollar terms if you put money on the fixed income. Uh, so we have seen a flow of funds into that space, and also a property also provide an interesting return story because of the housing backlog, and also the fact that the demand for property of a certain type is increasing, especially say apartments, and the yields are good. It's not. I would say, for the upmarket kind of apartments, yields of above 10%, 12, sometimes 15% are possible there. But I think most of the construction activities in that residential space hasn't really been about chasing yields, but value preservation. So Zim is not your typical off the box kind of market where what what does economics textbook say about this and that. It's all about understanding the dynamics of the marketplace, and then be able to act accordingly. I'll give an example of, say, some investors who came into the country. They're trying to move funds, and then, the financial system has not been able to facilitate that smoothly because of foreign currency problems. Some just chose to sit in there and lost value, but uh, there are some that were very adaptable who started buying properties in Zimbabwe, buying other assets in Zimbabwe, using those funds, blocked funds that they could not take outside. And now, once you are holding to, say, an asset, whether it's a property or a business, now you can you have some leeway in terms of being able to dispose of that and converting into foreign currency and take your money outside the country. So it's a market that has got unique features that you need to really understand. But it's a very small market, so the entire Zimbabwe Stock Exchange, for example, has got less than 60 listed companies, and these are really small. In Zim, we always say there are at best five counters that you need to look at. The rest of them, only when you've got time. So if you are not looking at Delta, you are looking at Econet, you are looking at Seedco, you are looking at InScore, you are looking at Simbisa, and those kind of businesses. That's where you get the liquidity that you want. In other stocks, liquidity is a big problem. So if you just master and even by in terms of even when you consider those top five, I mean there's not much work in terms of being able to analyze them. But where you really need to pay attention is on the macro. because that's where a lot of things do happen on the macro, mostly the policy environment, because there's a lot of chopping and changing of the policy. And when that is happening, it creates opportunities. It also creates some threats or some risks. So you need to be very, very alert. But it's a very interesting market that you can one can invest in, and the talent pool is there. You know, every time from my CFA side, we are always getting new people qualifying as CFA charter holders. Unfortunately, the market does not have capacity to absorb a bigger number of them, so they are always going out of the country. But that's still good because it gives them exposure in those markets, and some of them sometimes come back with the new connections that they have investing back into the country and that kind of things. And we for people like me, we don't tire going out there and getting more of our university students to start to venture into that with the CFA space or the CA space as a way of just developing the talent pool. We should believe that at some point they will come and support the local market. Or if not, we will still be proud to see them shining in those whichever market that they go into.
How do you see? I mean, obviously, very well. We're just finishing off a bit of documentation as we speak, and we've been in communication. How do you see? Various plans about the connectivity. Not now connected with Zimbabwe, which is great. That is now done. We're actually now moving on to the other nations and going through each country by country and connecting those countries via brokers such as yourself and through those custodians. How do you see how do you see that being benefit to, let's say, to you directly as or to Zimbabwe?
Well, it's very important, isn't it? Because you want um, to give the investors options. So diversity and generally diversification is good to risk as part of risk mitigation. The biggest problem that we have had in the past has been a regulatory environment which didn't allow us to invest outside of Zimbabwe. But right now, the new regulation is such that we can invest up to 15% of funds under management offshore. I actually believe that um, the platform such as what you are providing, where you give investors an option to invest in other African markets, I think it's really important. Um, we People have got ambitions to invest globally, but I think it'll be even better if they start slowly by getting exposure in other African countries. Maybe you'd say there's a general um, uh, correlation in terms of the returns from these markets, but I still believe that they are, you know, there are subtle differences that are there, and some of the differences will then give you a different return prospect. Yeah, so I think this is good, and also it just gives us a wider pool to select from and just broaden even our exposure even as we do that. So it's something that we are excited about, and would love to to play a bigger part in making sure that that happens for the benefit of our clients.
No, we're looking forward to working with you guys. And the only reason, one of the reasons I bring it up, you mentioned about debt, obviously fixed income, and fixed income being, I'm assuming, corporate debt and government debt, which obviously comes out in various tranches. But and that you're saying that is what is more active than other. That is, because there's new tranches coming out. And I'm assuming you're saying that actually the inactivity is based on when equities or shares become available in specific companies, they're just bought and held within the pension schemes or institutionally. So that reduces the activity on the market.
Well, I didn't get that last bit, um, but yeah, i- look, it's I think investors are always looking for a return, and it's good that we have all these asset classes, giving something different. So even the migration that we've seen of money away from, say, listed equities to corporate debt and government debt, mostly corporate debt, is just a reflection of the risk return scenario right now. And I think the biggest risk on the listed equities has been regulatory, where some of the regulators I have tended to um, you know see the stock market as a key driver of power market activities, to a point where they believe that as long as the market is thriving, the local currency is going to remain very volatile. And this is unfounded mostly. It's actually a reflection of some the gap in knowledge by the policymakers. Because one of the things that happened in the last 4 or 5 years was, they banned fungibility of dually listed stocks such as Old Mutual and PPC, because they said they created an implied rate. Yes, the implied rate was there, but it wasn't a driver of power market activity. So whenever policy comes hard on a certain asset classes, you tend to see movements into other asset classes. So right now, corporate debt is one area that is less regulated, and the returns are good. And another area that is less regulated is on um, uh, residential property side, where there's a proliferation of cluster developments. Uh, and it's said that the developments are mostly on the residential side, nothing on the commercial, very little commercial and industrial developments taking place. But this is just a reflection of the reality on the ground. There's a bit of activity, rather quite meaningful activity on other asset classes, for example, private equity. So we're seeing some money moving into private equity, into alternative energy. So whether it's solar farms, whether it's a small hydro, whether it's supporting export facing agriculture, there's quite a lot of funding of horticultural activities, for example, in the blueberry farming and etc. So that's managers seeking for a meaningful return, and at the end of the day, we're just looking for investors are looking for a return, given the risk that they are facing. So there's always that interplay. But the stock market remains the anchor. Obviously, as far as I'm concerned, I actually believe that you, even all those other asset classes, one could possibly get exposure into them through the stock market. Stock market still has to be functional. You get into private equity, you need to think of exit. And usually, the most sure and common exit from a private equity transaction is through listing. So you list, you get your money back, and etc. So if the stock market is not functioning well, then it means you are going to be stuck in there for the longest, even those private equity investments. So there's still a case for the stock market, but it's good to have other asset classes coming into, offering that diversification. Mm.
Sure. I agree. No, no, yeah, definitely. Okay, so we're kind of moving into the kind of the last segment now, Ragnar. So, Ranga. Sorry, beg your pardon, I said that wrong. We're coming into the last segment, Ragnar, and the let's cover the question of what do you believe is the future? What do you believe the future holds for Zimbabwe? As far as well, no, not for Zimbabwe. What do you believe the future holds for you? Zimbabwe, personal life, work wise. What are you looking forward to? What do you think people should be looking out for? That type of question, I
Oh,
suppose.
well, personally, I'm just working on expanding my horizon. So both in terms of having impact in the business space, growing my investment banking outfit, being able to um, you know assist many of these organizations that are looking for funding, making sure that they grow, and be with them every step of the way, whether starting from getting them venture capital, private equity space, getting them listed. I Over the years, from the time that I started, I've actually seen our capital markets shrinking, and I believe that I have got a responsibility as a professional to also contribute to the growth of this industry. So, yeah, we want to be able to do more. Also, have to play a part in terms of creating products, creating more listable kind of products on our stock market. Uh, we we have got that technical ability. We also believe that I've got a relatively good network base. Obviously, I can do better on that front, but we should be able to work together to develop this market, because if the market remains small, it also means it will remain small. Even if you're a big fish, you're a big fish in a small pond. So I'd prefer growing, expanding the pond. And even if I'm a tiny fish, as long as the pond is big, it means there are more opportunities there. And I also believe that the experience that I've earned over the years is one that I would share with more youngsters, and obviously they have to benefit from that experience, and even where I felt that maybe I could have done better. I would want most of them to avoid those kind of situation, and for them to be able to excel. It's good for the country. It's good for our market. And look, for Zim, I think the only way is up. We've been in this downturn for the longest time. Uh, I believe that we all have got a responsibility in our different kind of spaces to provide that, whether it's kickstarting the growth narrative of this country. We only do what we only focus on things that we can control. Those that we can't control, we can't do anything about it. So we are business people, we are market people, so we know we've got influence in the business sector, in the marketplace, and just ensuring that the next generation won't find it um, much harder, or experience the some of the hardships that we have experienced. Generally, Zimbabwean people are hardworking by nature, and I think that's why whenever things are not working, most of us tends to just take our bags and cross into into a market. Yeah, because No, I mean the talent pool here is amazing. It's one place where pretty much every youngster is going to school. They've got some tertiary qualification, whether it's a degree or a diploma, and they're just eager to work. So, in terms of the talent pool, it's amazing. The thing that you are lacking the most is actually capital. Capital hasn't been coming into Zim because of maybe a less favorable, policy environment. But I believe that if we start pulling and attracting capital into Zimbabwe, I mean, the growth trajectory is going to be unbelievable, and it's a market with a great potential. I think that's what I can say. Um, yeah, so exciting areas whether it's into people want to eat, so agriculture, processing, provide opportunities, infrastructure. The way we've been funding infrastructure has not been the best way because it's mostly government funded. We have not been able to access international capital markets. But I think that's where experts like us come into play. We are to be able to, attract capital from private players, get into public-private partnerships, build, operate, and transfer kind of structures, and then sort of relieve government of the pressure to fund infrastructure and etc. So there's a lot that we can do, and there's a lot that we'll do, and yeah, it will be good to have a different kind of narrative where it's about growth, it's about prosperity, it's about people just doing well. So I think that's how I look at the future. I see it as bright. I see it as um, really dependent upon us, doing what we can do to influence growth in the paths that in the areas that we are fully, involved in.
I love what I'm hearing, and yeah, my only experiences in Zimbabwe have been pleasurable to the extent that I agree with the actual talent pool. Everybody I come across seems to be of a senior level, at least at school, university. The fathers being very proud of them, and then you talk to the people who are in work, and again that they're highly qualified and very knowledgeable. Everybody seems to have a smile on the face, and seem to be the most resilient people I've ever come across. To be fair, having known what actually they've faced over the last few decades. So yeah, I truly believe that Zimbabwe is on its up at this moment in time, and will continue to do so. And I look forward to being somewhat, or at least there to experience it as well. So yeah, it's. All good things ahead of it, I believe. Um, okay, we're just about done, Ranga. So the last thing I'm going to ask you to do, the floor is going to be yours. You can say whatever you want, even if it's a bit to do with football. What the Get match was like over the weekend. I don't know if you're a sports fan, but the floor is yours, just to let the people know, what you're up to, what you're doing, and yeah, the last thoughts of the day.
No, thank you so much for the platform. Um, so yeah, I sort of covered most of my, aspirations and ambitions in the last segment.